Hello and welcome. My name is Lauren. I am a clinical midwifery specialist, a mum of 4 and founder of One Mama Midwife. I am here today to talk to you all about traveling with your breastfed baby. So I recently just went on a big overseas holiday with my family, and we definitely learnt a lot on the way from both a midwife perspective and from being a mum of 4 perspective. So as you may know, traveling can get a little bit tricky with kids. You end up with 100 more suitcases and bags than you would if it was just the 2 of you, but it is totally worth it. So my first tip is that when you're looking to book your flight, is the airline that you're booking with, do they offer what's called a bassinet seat? So a bassinet seat is often a seat that is in the bulkhead of the plane, so you've got more foot room, but also they have a bassinet that attaches onto the wall. So obviously if your baby falls asleep, this is super handy because you can just pop that baby straight into the bassinet. You're still really close by and you've got the leg room, you've got a bit more room, a bit more space, and then your hands free to either help other children or to simply eat your food and enjoy the flight. Not only can you use these bassinet seats for when the baby is asleep, but we used the bassinet for when the baby was awake as well. So as you know, the food comes at all different times on an aeroplane, and sometimes you just need a bit more space to be able to eat. So we would pop our little baby Wilder into the bassinet seat with some toys, and he'd sit there and play whilst I was able to eat my food. So it just made the trickier times on the plane, such as meal times, that little bit easier, having a little bit more space. Now, most airlines won't let you put the baby on the floor. It is a health risk for them, so they don't like babies to be placed on the floor. However, some airlines may allow that, so it's definitely something for you to check before you book as well. But definitely popping baby into the bassinet for sleep or for play can really help give you a bit of a break on the airplane if it is a long trip. So my next tip is all about your carry-on bag. So what should you have in your carry-on bag that can really benefit you for that flight coming up? So first of all, in your carry-on bag, you're going to pack spare clothes, and I mean spare clothes. So at least 2 changes of outfit for you, your partner, any other kids, and obviously your baby. So making sure that that carry-on bag has easily accessible clothing means that if something were to happen on the plane, it is easy for you to grab those out and change. So for example, when we were overseas recently on the plane on the way home, I had obviously fed Wilder a little bit too much and then mixed that in with the motion of the aeroplane, and he did have quite a large vomit on the plane. Now this went all over my husband, and he didn't pack any spare clothes in his carry-on, so he was stuck smelling of vomit for the next 10 hours of the flight. So really important that if it is a long flight, that you do pack enough clothes for you, your partner, your husband, and any other kids, as well as the baby, so that if something were to happen, you're not stuck smelling of vomit for the rest of the trip. Next, you want to pack enough nappies. So however many nappies your baby would normally use in that time, double it. Just in case you do not want to be mid-air and use your last nappy and you have a poo explosion and you can't do anything about it. So always pack double what you think you're going to need for nappies and wipes. So it's always better to have spares and take them on the plane and then take them back off than to not have any spares. Next, in your carry-on, I want you to have little things. So little toys that your baby can play with. So you can get from Amazon, toys that stick to the actual window of the plane. So the plane window, that you just search window toys, and they're often, the baby can flick it and it'll spin. They're always bright colors, so very intriguing for a baby, especially if this isn't a toy that they're used to. So I would recommend putting some toys away that you're going to take with you so that the baby hasn't seen them for a while, so they are exciting and they are new for when you're on the plane. Teething toys, the Haakaa teething ball is always a good option. They can play around with it. It's not noisy or loud for the other passengers, but it is something that that baby can look at and play with. Next, I would pack a little book. So black and white books are really amazing for baby's development. There's lots of studies on how black and white can really stimulate a baby's brain. So getting a black and white book, again, they're not expensive. You could even make it if you wanted to. and taking that on board to read to your baby and point and play and touch and feel whilst you're on the plane can really help them sit still for a little bit longer, but also help them enjoy the flight as well. Next, in your carry-on bag, I really would like you to pack some snacks. So snacks are one of the biggest things that I want you to take for your overseas trip. Now, a lot of people don't realize that you can actually take baby food on the plane. So if you've traveled internationally before, you would know that you can't take a lot of food on the plane with you, generally speaking, in terms of like home cooked meals and water bottles and things like that. But for a baby, you are allowed to. So you can bring boiled water. So if you were formula feeding, you can bring boiled water, or if your baby is old enough to have water, so over 6 months, they can have some boiled water in a bottle. However, if they're under 6 months, and obviously you wouldn't choose this option, then they can have their solid foods and their snacks. So if your baby, depending on how old they are and how much solid food they eat, would depend on what food you brought. So a really, really great one is using the Haakaa squeezy pouch. And so what we did is we put yogurt in this. So as you can see, it obviously holds quite a lot, the squeezy pouch. And we put yogurt in that in a little esky with some ice bricks in there as well, just to keep it cool. You can often ask the air hosties as well if they can pop things into the fridge for you if you're carrying things that need to be refrigerated, like breast milk that's expressed, for example. It is also important to note that if you are thinking of bringing something that is frozen, so frozen baby food or frozen breast milk, there is no freezing option on an aircraft, so they don't have an accessible freezer that you can pop your food into. So just noting that if you're going to take an esky with some ice bricks, that whatever food or breast milk you have is more than likely going to defrost, and so then would be on the time limit of being used according to whatever food or breast milk it is. So it is important that you look at the Australian Breastfeeding Association guidelines if you are in Australia, and look at their storage guidelines in terms of once that milk has defrosted, how long you have to actually use that milk. The next thing that we took on the plane was like little packets of baby food. So if you go into Woolies or Coles, they will have packeted baby food, often muesli bars, little rusk sticks. They have little corn circles with yogurt on them that are in packets. So we took, I'm not kidding, like boxes and boxes of these packet items. We had one box in the carry-on, and we had the other boxes all in the suitcase, because obviously when you're traveling, food is different in different countries and there's different availabilities for the babies in different countries. So we knew that we had backup food if we couldn't find something where we were or the country that we were, or when we were in Disneyland, for example. Just having that healthy snack in the bag that we knew was safe for our baby to eat really took a lot of the stress off the traveling for us. So we would take that food that the baby was used to with us. So if your baby was under 6 months and wasn't on solid food yet, then obviously you would just continue with the breastfeeding or the formula feeding as you would normally if you were spending the day at home. So a big thing is to just imagine that you were at home. I know obviously there's lots of people around, but just imagine that you're at home and try and continue following your baby's cues and feeding them on demand as they require, even though they're in the air. As with any situation that's a little bit different for our babies, they may adjust by wanting to feed a little bit more often, and that's completely fine as well. The next thing that I would say needs to be with you, absolute necessity, is your Haakaa pump. So your OG pump, it's super small. It's obviously going to fit in your handbag, but if you are traveling long distances, it can really make a difference if you don't have the time to stop, especially if you're in the car. You don't have the time to stop every hour or so to feed the baby. You could quickly express and give it to baby in their Haakaa bottle, which you would also leave in your bag. Or if you're on the aeroplane and the baby is not interested in feeding, but you know that they're hungry, but there's too much going on, again, you could try and express and give it to baby in a bottle. So definitely having your pump and your bottle there just in case. You never know what's going to happen, so it's always good to have these things in your carry-on. Interestingly, we actually were driving from LA to Canada because flights were cancelled, so we ended up doing this giant trip. One of the legs of the trip, I actually left my Haakaa pump in the suitcase instead of my carry-on because we were quickly just packing and I didn't think about it and I threw it in the suitcase. Anyway, we were driving, we'd gotten like 2 hours down the road, there was nowhere safely to stop, and Wilder was absolutely screaming his head off. So I actually had to hand express into the bottle and then feed it to him from there. So it took 10 times longer doing it that way than if I had had the pump. I could have just expressed with the pump, but obviously didn't have it, and there was an alternative option, and then we stopped not long down the track so I could finish that feed, but it just tied him over until we got there. So always handy to have these things with you. Then it's always handy to make sure that you have your baby's comforter. If they have a comforter, make sure you're taking that with you everywhere, carry-on, prams, cars, everything, just to really help that baby adjust and feel a little bit more comfortable and like they're at home. So we took our riffraff with us everywhere we went, just so that Bub felt a little bit more comfortable. So taking a travel pram with you that you can actually take on board the aircraft and store up in the overhead lockers is an absolute game changer, because you can actually, once you go through all of the security checks and you've got, 2 hours until your plane leaves, you can actually allow your baby to have a decent rest in the pram if they want to, or it's just an extra set of hands just to make life easier. It also means that once you get off the plane at the end, you can pop baby straight into that and head straight to the carousel area. Whilst you wait for your bags, you know that your baby is safe in the pram. They may fall asleep, they may just hang out in there, but either way, it makes your life so much easier. You then will want to be taking a good baby carrier. So if your baby is really unhappy on the aeroplane, you can pop them into that carrier and you can do laps of the aisles. That there are so many mums and dads and partners on planes that just do laps of the aisles with their baby in a baby carrier, and it is a really, really great way to help them settle and feel safe and secure near you where they can hear your heartbeat. So this is a really great way to calm them and settle them if you need to whilst you're on the plane. And again, it's going to help you stay hands-free, especially if you had any other kids, then your hands are free to help them whilst that baby sleeps on you. This is also a good option if you are unable to get a bassinet seat. Again, the baby is on you and you'll still have both hands free to either eat your meal or help other children or do whatever it is you want to do on the aeroplane. Then the next thing you want to take with you is a car seat. So you are allowed to check obviously with your individual airline, but you're allowed to take car seats with you at no extra cost. And this is a really, really great way to know that your baby is safe whilst you're overseas. So some car rental places will provide car seats for an extra charge if you request this. However, not all hire car companies stock car seats, which is crazy. So you may not end up getting one. You may get there and they say, sorry, we don't have any car seats, and then you may be a little bit stuck. So taking one with you, it's really in the scheme of things, it's not that much more to carry, but it does make a difference for knowing that you have a safe car seat for when you get to your destination. Again, these would go underneath the aeroplane, so they would go into the oversize section, and you can either get like specific bags for your car seats, or you can use when you get to the airport. What we did is we just used the cling wrap at the airport and just wrapped all of the car seats so that they were safe and clean. So talking about breastfeeding, it is so important for your baby's ears that they are breastfeeding on taking off and landing. So what this does is it actually neutralizes the pressure in their ears, the air pressure. Landing is a bit worse on a baby's ears than taking off. So really important that you breastfeed on takeoff and landing. Now, when you're taking off and landing, your air hostess will give you a special click seatbelt for your baby. So it goes through your seatbelt and then clicks around your baby. Now, this can make it a little bit more challenging to breastfeed. However, if you've just got a button-up shirt on or a breastfeeding friendly shirt, you would just sit your baby there. As you feel that you're about to take off in the air, then I would gently lie the baby down and allow them to feed. Again, if they don't feed during this time, if you're offering it and they're not interested, don't force them. They may be completely fine. So some babies, their ears will hurt them and they will either cry or feed. and other babies, it doesn't make any difference for them. So don't stress if your baby isn't wanting that feed, but most of the time they will actually feed at the breast during that takeoff and landing, because they do feel that change in pressure of what's going on. So similar to us, you kind of chew your jaw a little bit to get your ears to pressurize and almost pop feeling. And that's exactly what we want for our babies. So by sucking at the breast or at a bottle or on a dummy, they're able to help pressurize their ears a little bit better. And another big thing is time zone. So a lot of people do worry about helping their baby adjust to a new time zone. And I want to start by saying that babies are super, super malleable, and they just adjust to things so much better than we actually expect them to. So my biggest way of helping them adjust to that time zone is from the minute that you get onto that aeroplane, your day starts fresh. So it doesn't matter what you've done before then, that day starts fresh. So let's say you get on the aeroplane, and in the country that you're going to, the time would be 6 a.m. So you then in your mind need to be like, okay, I'm on this plane, it's now 6 a.m. You then will adjust to that time zone if you think that that is the time that it is. So we change all of our phones and laptops and devices, everything to the time it is in that country before we board the plane. You would get on the plane and your baby may have their morning nap. So say they nap normally around 9 o'clock-ish. You get on the plane at 6 o'clock, you play with them for a few hours, then you put them down for their morning nap. Then they'd wake up, you would feed them. So whatever food you've brought with you, or you can mash up some of the plain food. If you haven't brought any food with you, feed that to the baby, and then go about your day trying to adjust to the new time zone on the plane and then when you get off. And what this is going to do is it might be a bit of a rough day, and it may be that you may need to hold your baby a bit more or feed them a bit more or cuddle them a bit more, but it will kickstart them into that time zone then. Then you've got to bring into consideration the fact that your sunsets are going to be like, a baby can't read a clock. So they're going to know that it's day because it's light outside, and they're going to know it's night because it's dark outside. So knowing that your baby will adjust quite well, it may be 1 or 2 rough days, but then as long as you're sticking with the new time zone, your baby will adjust really, really well. So even if that means pushing them a little bit on that first day, they do tend to adjust. And the last thing I want to talk about is about travel cots or sleeping arrangements when you are overseas or traveling internationally. So most hotels, if you're staying in hotels, most hotels will have cots available that they don't charge extra for if you ask for them in your room. So definitely something to check before you're traveling. If the hotels that you're staying at will provide you with a cot, then you don't need to take a travel pram with you, which makes it a lot easier. Again, you're obviously having one less item that you're having to cart around with you. In saying that, if your baby sleeps really well in a travel cot and is used to a travel cot, you are more than welcome to bring your travel cot with you. And often you can pop extra things into the travel cot bag, so you get a bit more space to bring things there or home, depending on where you're going. So those are my top travel tips based on my experience traveling with the 4 kids, but also from a midwife perspective of what is actually going to help your little baby on that aeroplane and adjusting to the new time zone. So I hope that these tips have really helped you. Try not to stress about other people. Everyone's been there at some point in their life. Enjoy that travel, enjoy your trip, and create the most beautiful memories with your gorgeous little kids.